I'm Alexander Suriajani, mole on right hand, penguin duck birthmark. So as I said before, it's 5:02 August 20th. So I've said this before. My parents are not psychotic. Um, it's hard to believe and grasp the existence of technology you never heard of and have no proof that it exists. And especially when it's technology that less than 0.001% of the global population knows about. Um, like I said, it's not the type of technology you'll find on Google. It's not other than synthetic telepathy, but you won't find implantation, I don't think, on Google, or it may even be under the radar of the government for all I know. They may know now or didn't know, but I mean, this is the type of technology United Nations counterterrorism guys investigating terrorism, CIA guys uncover at like a hidden weapons manufacturing lab type tech. It's experimental. Not all experimental tech you can find on Google, and not all experimental tech and theorized tech can you find proof that it exists on Google, and that's what typical civilians have. Um, so my parents just can't fathom this tech exists, and if law enforcement agents and politicians, etc., and people you rely on for information about these things say such doesn't exist, you got to try to trust the government as well as others. And if there's experts who say it doesn't exist, you'd have to trust the government. I don't know what the experts say. I don't know if my parents have asked anyone, but yeah, if they did, and these people said it didn't exist, then one, they could be covering it up, but two, which they are, if they lied. Two, they may not know it exists, but um, yeah, your parents and typical civilians rely on government, law enforcement, experts to tell you whether something exists or not. And if everyone's lying or being bribed to cover it up, it may be hard to believe it. So it's not psychosis. They just don't know their son. They think I'm psychotic, but they don't realize I can fathom things that I'm smarter than they realize, I guess. But this implantation jazz is real. The telepathy is real. Like I said, if telepathy wasn't possible, the government wouldn't pour money into developing it. They wouldn't be like, "Oh, it's not possible. There's no way it could happen. We're just going to waste a bunch of money to make it." Yeah, they wouldn't do that. I don't think anyone would do that. It wouldn't make sense. They probably theorize it is possible. That's why they would actually take money and invest and try to develop it. And they were developing it in 2008. But the fact that I know I have two-way communication and it was a microwave auditory effect, and I even showed them articles in Wired magazine that there's a thing called microwave auditory effect. I've been trying to. People like to say, "Why me?" Supposedly, I'm a victim of a gambling ring, a RICO, and there's high-stake gambling and billion-dollar bets and big-time money. They're using the tech for betting manipulation. Is one reason, amongst maybe other reasons that I'm unsure of. But part of it's betting manipulation, and then maybe a frame, amongst other things. But they've been committing data theft and more, regardless of that. But yeah, my family's not psychotic. It's just hard for a typical civilian to grasp the existence of technology that less than 0.001% of the global population knows about, especially synthetic telepathy and especially implantation. Implantation is something crazy. Um, it would be hard to believe you can just pass devices into the flesh. It's really hard to fathom that. It just kind of, people, you don't really hear about that. I never heard of it. Never even seen it in a movie. Let me put it that way. People constructing devices in your nervous system under the flesh. I've never even seen this in a movie or even read this in a book. So I had to figure it out and experience it, and then I started seeing it was real. So you wouldn't just randomly someone tell you about it, and you're just going to randomly believe them. It's going to take a while. And even when I was a victim of it, I had to figure out it was real. I didn't know what was going on at first. So that's a key point. Even when I was actually experiencing it, I still didn't know it was real until I thought about it long enough to where it clicked and it was like, okay, it is this. For instance, recognizing it was two-way communication instead of one. Finding that globalresearch.org article, reading Wired magazine, reading about microwave auditory effect and realizing it wasn't microwave auditory effect because it was two-way communication. Then realizing I never had any surgeries to get anything put into my brain. So how else did it get there? They had to do some sort of pass it through my flesh without cutting me. So then I thought of, then one day I was looking at this wall right here, that wall right next to my bathroom. I put my hand on it, and then I started thinking about the space between atoms and a solid. So then I started thinking maybe it's something they're constructing with pieces very small, or there's some physics process that I'm not aware of. But either way, I knew I had a device in my brain because also I'd even feel people pulling on it and trying to pull it out, and they couldn't get it out. And people call it a permaplant and the mother implant. So sometimes there's people who try to pull it out and can't pull it out, and I even feel structures in my head moving as they're trying to pull it. So that went on quite often. So that's another piece of this. But yeah, the fact that I had two-way communication made me realize it wasn't microwave auditory effect, because microwave auditory effect works via conductive hearing and vibration. So how could I go like this? How could I do that if it was microwave auditory effect? Meaning, what am I doing? Sending vibrations to a specific location without an address? Yeah, how would he even make it to the computer if it was microwave auditory effect and not some device directing it to wherever that little voice I hear in my head it goes? Sounds like a little girl's voice, kind of. Could be like a speaker or an Android, not sure. But it's really faint right now. I can't hear it as efficiently as I typically do. But I was trying to hear it. I couldn't hear it too well just now. They can control the tone of it. Sometimes I can hear it very clearly. Sometimes I don't hear it as effectively, as well as other. They don't share the correct device credentials with people either. So there's some people think this communication is one-on-one, but there's actually certain features of this device that they leave out to, I guess, investors or whoever, and multiple people can communicate with it at once. So they leave out key features of the device. They leave out the device credentials, what they call them. But yeah, my parents aren't psychotic, if that's what these kids keep trying to imply. My parents just weren't able to. It's hard for someone to grasp technology they've never heard of and technology you can't find on Google. So I don't know what the hell they're talking about. And you can't blame someone if they couldn't fathom something that less than 0.001% of the global population knows about. And the only reason they know about it is because they probably created it or invested in it and were shown it. They didn't read about it or find it. Someone probably told them about it and showed them it and showed it was real. So that's the only reason why even probably 0.001% of the world's population would know about it, is either they invested in it or shown it, or they're victims of it, like me. And so that's how I know about it, because I'm a victim of this jazz. And that's how I figured it out, because I didn't get any surgeries to have synthetic teeth. I never asked anyone. Didn't know one cut my head open, so someone must have passed it into my brain through some sort of beam physics process, some sort of nano to femto manufacturing like process is my theory. Ion beam implantation, nano to femto manufacturing like process. Not sure. That's just that's where I stopped. I was like, maybe I'll keep exploring right now. But some people hint at what was it? Superposition. I don't know if that's true or not. Some kid always tries to say that, but I don't know. I need to read more about that. I was coming across something called quantum tunneling once, and I never explored it. But these guys were they actually try to stop me from reading. So they use these implantables and disrupt my brain when I try to read. But I'd explore that. That might quantum tunneling and things of that nature may shed light on the potential process. But that was an article I came across. But yeah, or they could just be constructing with particles very small, and it's like a nano to femto manufacturing like process, and maybe there's particles small enough to fit between the space between atoms in a solid, and that's how they get through the skull. I don't know, or some crazy physics process. But it is one thing I can assure you, it's a manufacturing process, because sometimes they'll be firing stuff at me, and I get up and they're like they get mad because they're in the middle of creating some device or constructing something, and they'll be like, I didn't get to finish. I'll overhear them, and I'll be like, fuck you. And so they're actually constructing. So I know it's a manufacturing like process. Now, what size particles they're using, I'm not sure, and I don't know the exact mechanism, but that's my theory. Regardless, no, I'm not psychotic at all. Overhearing. But yeah. Just because someone can't fathom it does not mean they're psychotic. It just means they may not be able to grasp their stuff. They don't exist. That they may not be able to grasp that. They can't read about everything on Google and can't grasp that. Just because they've never heard of it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So just because you never heard of something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And just because you can't find it on Google, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So, also, like I said before, what do you know about physics? How much do you know about physics, and how much do you know about manufacturing, pico manufacturing, etc., etc.? Pico's experimental too, is what I read. These are just constructing with really small particles, 10 to the negative 9, 10 to the negative 12 femto would be 10 to the negative 15th. I don't even know if it exists, but there are certain experiments we don't even know exist that could be going on. Key point. So how much about that do you know? And then once you realize probably not much, then who are you to say what's possible and not possible? What's possible and not possible? I've said this before, but key point, it's real. Telepathy's real, implantation's real. And just because someone can't fathom it doesn't mean they're psychotic. It just means, They can't find it on Google. Certain experts they ask may say, no, it's impossible. Certain experts they ask may be being bribed or being an investor and trying to keep it secret and say, no, it's not possible. Uh, they may be lying to law enforcement. They may be lying to others. They may be carrying out a terrorist plot with it and trying to keep it hush hush because they use it as a tool for economic espionage, uh, financial crimes, theft of IP, theft of passwords. So they may be keeping it quiet. So that's another piece of this. But regardless of that, I can guarantee you it's real. Swear on my mother it's real. Um, but don't knock anyone just because they can't realize it's real. I mean, like I was going to say, I was in the psych ward thinking there or some of these guys were implanted there potentially, and I was trying to analyze it myself, knowing it was real. And I try to talk to these guys, and it's not as easy as you think. Let me put it that way. And I actually went to med school and have taken psychiatric diagnoses. One thing I will say though is if you actually talk to a real psychotic person, it's hard for them to even pay attention to a diagnostic examination, asking them a history and trying to ask them questions to try to see if they fulfill a diagnostic criterion for something, and even just trying to investigate them with questioning. And they don't really pay attention and they can't really um, respond to certain questions clearly, and they'll lose train of thought and this and that. So it's even hard to even ask psychotic people. But granted, I mean, they're not implanted. It's just a lot harder than you would think. But someone experiencing what I experienced that you thought is psychotic, who can, do things typical psychotic people can't, you may lean more